are running slightly late. We'll do our best to begin while the people are coming into the room. We'll start right away. We just heard three cases, three very interesting experiences from Latin America, from Argentina, Brazil, and Panama. We'll now change gears. We'll come to Europe and listen to three other experiences. They are local experiences, and they are indeed a reference for us in Europe. Flanders, the province of Helsingør in the south of Sweden, and then our case, the Catalan model. Of course, we are lagging behind somewhat in terms of if we compare this to other cases, but we are all doing our best so that we can keep improving. Without further ado, I will now give the floor to Anne van der Putte, who is the project manager of the International Policy Unit of OVAM, which is the waste public agency in Flanders. Anne, you have the floor.
Buenos dias, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to say it's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for this invitation and for your interest in the Public Waste Agency of Flanders. After a short introduction of our agency, I will show you immediately some results that we obtain, particularly in the field of the municipal solid waste management in Flanders. And during my presentation, I will explain you how we achieve these results over the time and how we are shifting from a waste management towards a material management. But how can I move forward? I think this is a technical problem. Okay, and now? It's blocked.
No. Tenim un altre...
Can somebody help us?
Tenim un problema de bateria del passador.
Two minutes for my presentation.
No, it's a problem of low battery.
Okay. I think my presentation demands too much energy. Which one? Okay. Okay. So it's to understand our waste policy. It's first of all, to understand our waste policy, I would like to say some words about Flanders. Flanders is one of the three regions of Belgium, located in the northern part of the country. Flanders is very densely populated, and we have a high degree of industrialization. So you can consider, in fact, Flanders as one big city. Since 1980, in Belgium, each region became full competent for its environmental policy. And in Flanders, the competences on waste management, materials management, and soil management were centralized in one body, the Public Waste Agency of Flanders, that has been established in 1981. Important is that the head of our agency is the Flemish minister responsible for the environment, but the daily management is delegated to a general administrator. So the main task of our agency is, first of all, to prepare the legislation on waste and materials management on behalf of the minister responsible for the environment. And once the legislation is approved by the Flemish government, we implement and supervise the implementation of the legislation on waste and materials management in Flanders. And we have the same task regarding the soil management. Our waste decree of 1981 has recently been revised and reformed in a materials decree. And later on you will understand why we call it not anymore a waste decree, but a materials decree. As I have already said, Flanders is a very densely populated area. We have 6 million inhabitants, spread over 308 municipalities. And in Flanders, the municipalities are grouped in 26 associations of municipalities. This is a corporation structure between different municipalities on a free basis with an average of approximately 250,000 inhabitants. In Belgium, and also in Flanders, the municipalities are legally responsible for the collection and treatment of the municipal waste produced within their territory. And the municipalities are also the competent authorities for levying taxes on the collection and processing of the municipal solid waste. And these two basic principles, together with the fact that Flanders is a densely populated area, create the framework within which the Flemish waste policy is developed and continues to evolve. This is very important to understand our waste policy. I'm always proud when I can show you this chart, because on this chart you can follow the significant growth of the separate collection of the municipal solid waste at source from 1990 until 2015. And at the same time, you can follow the decrease of the residual waste over the same period. So currently, thanks to the efforts of the local authorities, the municipalities, the citizen, we collect 70% of the municipal solid waste source separated in order to be reused, recycled or composted. 30% is collected as residual waste, and of which 27% is incinerated in incinerators, all equipped with energy recovery and with the most advanced flue gas cleaning system, because we live in a densely populated area and nobody wants an incinerator in his neighborhood. From this chart, we can also see that since 1997, we collect more waste separately at source compared to the residual waste. And since 1997, we have also a landfill ban for municipal solid waste. The less than 1% that is mentioned here is really waste that cannot be recycled or incinerated. So, also important is that in our policy, the aim is to keep the residual waste to a quantity as small as possible. And the target in our policy is 150 kilograms per inhabitant per year. So you can see also that we achieve already this target since the last 10 years. So for us, landfilling becomes more and more a history. This diagram gives you an overview of the waste that is collected separately in order to be reused, recycled, and composted. And as you can see, the bio-waste, the kitchen waste, the garden waste, the biodegradable household waste represent 32% of the waste that is collected separately at source. And the aim is to divert the bio-waste from the landfill site to transport it to composting facilities in order to be processed and to become good quality compost in accordance to our standards. So the reason that we achieve these very good results is that we regulate on a consistent way our waste management in accordance with the well-known hierarchy of waste management operation. We all know that waste prevention and the prevention of the harmfulness of waste is the most important environmental solution, followed by reuse, recycling and composting of the waste materials. The third option is the incineration of waste with energy recovery and, once again, under stringent sanitary conditions because we live in a very densely populated area. And the last and lowest option in our waste policy is the final disposal of waste on the landfill site. So these four options create the basis for a sustainable waste management system and are the key drivers for resource efficiency. And waste management is everybody's business, from the smallest household to the biggest company. And to realize and to steer the waste management options from the lowest landfilling, the most easiest way from landfilling to the most difficult step, waste prevention, we use in Flanders a whole range of policy instruments. So we have legal-based instruments as legislation. We have incineration and landfill bans. I have already mentioned that we have a ban for the municipal solid waste. We implement the extended producer responsibility. We have mandatory collection schemes for the municipalities. We use also market-based instruments as levies. We have taxes on landfilling and incineration. We implement the we implement the pay-as-you-throw system. I will come back later on in my presentation on the interest of the pay-as-you-throw system. And we support also the municipalities financially with their infrastructure necessary for the separate collection at source for the municipal solid waste. We use also inform-based instruments as education and programs, public awareness and information programs and campaigns. So the challenge is to find out the most appropriate mix of policy instruments in order to achieve your targets. It's not the number of instruments that is very important, it's your smart combination that is important. This is an important diagram because on this diagram you can see the cost, the gate fee for landfilling and incineration together with the levies for landfilling and incineration, the dark bar. And as you can see, the levies for landfilling is much higher than the levies for the incineration of waste in order to discourage landfilling. And a part of the incomes generated by these levies flew back to the municipalities to support them financially with the infrastructure necessary for the separate collection at source of the municipal solid waste. So, in the beginning, before the start of our agency, before 1981, citizens threw the waste all together in one bag, and the waste collected was transported to the landfill sites and to the existing incinerators. At that time, I can say you, landfilling was the most dominant way for waste disposal and mostly for free. So there was no structured waste management at all. So we started by creating order out of chaos, by closing approximately by closing all the illegal dump sites. It was approximately 90% of the landfill sites that were closed, by redeveloping more or less appropriate landfill sites, by making at that time the maximal use of the existing incineration capacity, and last but not least, by giving the starting signal for the separate collection at source of the municipal solid waste by creating a network of recycling yards. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I will make a big jump. I will make a jump of approximately 20 years, but this jump has been made step by step. So nowadays, for the separate collection at source in Flanders, we have two systems simultaneous in operation. We have the door-to-door collection of the residual waste, the door-to-door collection of the biodegradable waste, of the paper and cardboard, and of the light fraction, the packaging waste. We call it the PMD, plastic bottles and flasks, metal cans, and drink cartons. At the same time, we have our bring sites in operation. You can call it also civic community centers. You can call it recycling yards. It's all different names for the same, where people can bring on fixed day, fixed hours, under the supervision of a recycling yard keeper, recyclable materials. People can also bring other waste streams, as the small hazardous household waste, in order to be sure that these waste streams will be treated on an environmental sound way. We have a network of bottle banks where people can dispose of container glass separated in clear glass and in colored glass. And in Flanders, we promote very, very strongly the home composting. And we create also a network of reuse centers where people can bring reusable goods for free in order to be refreshed, repaired, and refurbished and resold at a low price. And this picture results in the 70% of the waste that is collected separately in order to be reused, recycled, or composted. I told you that we promote very strongly the home composting, and to stimulate the citizen to start with the home composting, we worked out. Sorry, I'm a little bit too fast. So we have at the moment a network of 337 recycling yards in operation. It means approximately 1 per 18,000 inhabitants, and more than 50% of the recyclable materials is collected at the recycling yard with a high purity level. And this purity level is very important because the market for recyclable materials is an international market, and how better the recyclables are, how better the price you will receive on the market. So we consider more and more waste as a raw material and not longer as a waste material in order to close the material loop. I told you already, we promote indeed very strongly the home composting, and to stimulate citizens to start and to cooperate in the home composting, we worked out a lot of educational materials as leaflets and posters. But next to this promotion strategy, home composting requires also technical support. And for this technical support, we create a network of compost masters. Compost masters are volunteers that help and instruct the citizen with how to start with the home composting, with the functioning of the compost bin, and how to make good quality compost. I can tell you that more than 60% of the Flemish household compost their bio-waste in their backyard. So we have door-to-door collection. We run several recycling yards. This has, of course, a cost. And how do municipalities finance in Flanders their waste services towards the citizen? They do it by imposing yearly a fixed tax, and by imposing a fixed tax and a tax for each residual waste bag the citizen set out. By imposing a tax, a cash tax for the collection of the packaging waste, the light fraction, a cash tax by means of a sticker that you stick on your container every year for the door-to-door collection of the biodegradable biodegradable household waste, the access to the recycling yard is for free. For recyclable materials, the access to the bottle bank is also for free, and the collection of paper and cardboard is also for free. So a combination of a fixed tax with a cash tax, first of all, reduce the residual waste, because how better you sort your waste, how less residual waste you will produce. It gives a boost to the separate collection. It makes the citizen more and more aware of the real cost for the collection and treatment of the waste. And last but not least, it applies the polluter pays principle. But be aware when you want to introduce the pay-as-you-throw system in your municipality, be aware of the negative effects as illegal dumping, burning of the waste in the backyard, and littering. So when you want to introduce it, you need to introduce it very, very, very slowly. As already mentioned in previous presentation, people have to participate in the separate collection. So the commitment of the citizen in the participation of this new system is very important. So the separate collection can only work if the citizens are well informed about the new collection system and if they are aware of the new system. And this is a picture of our famous waste collection calendar that mentioned on which day which waste fraction will be collected door to door. It's very handy. It hangs mostly in the kitchen or in the garage of each household. Recently, we developed also an app for the smartphone that gives you the signal the day before about which waste fraction you need to set out tomorrow. Children are a very important target group. They are sensitive for nature and environment. They educate their parents and grandparents in their eco-friendly attitude. So we worked also out a lot of educational materials for schools. So if we achieve these very good results, 70% of our waste management, 70% of our municipal solid waste is collected at source separately. This is mainly due to the fact that the municipalities cooperate together in their fight against the waste amount. So we recommend very strongly the cooperation between municipalities. Municipalities, or the Association of Municipalities, is a perfect level to set up a better waste management. They are close to their citizens, and they are best placed to set up a convenient, user-friendly, and adequate collection system. Very important is that the municipalities, or Association of Municipalities, keep control over the collection and treatment of the municipal solid waste, and keep control also over the cost for the collection and treatment of the municipal waste. Municipalities and Association of Municipalities play a key role in the implementation of the national, regional or local management plan, and they can be front runners in setting up a better waste management system. So I think you could see that we already have taken a big first step, but we are still wasting too many raw materials. And the environmental pressure caused by the use of these raw materials is definitely too high. So there are several urgent reasons to move forward, to close the material loop, and to shift the focus of our waste management towards a circular economy approach. So in our vision, waste management is working on each step of the hierarchy of waste management operations, and this on an integrated and planned way, is looking for a good mix of policy instruments, and it's not the number of instruments that is important, but the combination, and is working, and the previous speaker has also said it, is working on the full commitment of all your stakeholders. It's working on the commitment of the citizen, the service providers, and the local authorities. And is also working on a continuous dialogue with all your stakeholders. I can tell you that without this commitment and without this dialogue in Flanders, we should never achieve these good results. So don't be afraid of waste management, because waste management contributes to resource conservation, creates definitely business opportunities and employment, improves the environment, and stimulates the innovation. Multos gracias. A manual about school composting, I have a manual about home composting, and how to set up a reuse center. For those who want this manual, please, I will not take them back to Brussels.
Sí. Pasa. Si le queréis pedir ejemplares de este manual.
Copies of this manual. And I'm sure would be delighted to provide you with them. Now we're going on to the next speaker, Mr. Kim Olsen. Kim is the manager of NSR Helsingborg, which is an intermunicipal public company of the province of Iskania, which is in the south of Sweden, touching on Denmark. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thanks for inviting me here to Barcelona and some better weather than the Chilenos had when they visited Copenhagen and Helsingborg last week. I will stay here. In my presentation, I won't have any songs. I won't have any diagrams. I won't have any gorillas. I have a cow. But I want to tell a story. And I have a vision that I want you to share and to be the ones who fulfill the vision of a society that takes the step from a linear economy to a circular economy. I thought it was more Portuguese or Brazilians here, so I translated into Portuguese, but Mr. Silva, for you. And if the translation is wrong, then we can blame Google Translator. So, like London, I come from a part close to Copenhagen. We call it Grande Copenhagen. It's the company where I'm CEO. It's, you can say, 1/10 of the area with 300,000 inhabitants, and the owner are 6 municipalities. We do about 5 million services every year. And last year we were awarded as the best waste management in Sweden. And some weeks ago we got a much more interesting prize. We got prized in Las Vegas for a documentary about a sustainable society and waste management. And it was a TV production team from Hong Kong who went to our area to find out how do you think and what do you do? And we got awarded in the category human concern. I said Greater Copenhagen. And usually then you define yourself in a physical way. Yeah, we live here, 3 million inhabitants and so on. But we want to do it different. It's a way to live. It's the Scandinavian spirit that Greater Copenhagen stands for. It's a society where you have a sustainability, where you have the creativity, where you have the equality, trust, and we do it together. And one small a story about this, how we manifest this, is do everyone know what Bluetooth is? Do you use it? Bluetooth, do you know where the name came from? Why Bluetooth? Actually, the name comes from the Vikings. But you know, Bluetooth, it's not 1,000 years old. It was the story about the tribe leader of the Vikings. Once a year, he found out that, okay, we go all over Europe and some parts in Asia, and then we look at our interests and bring home some raw material. But the problem is that we fight each other. Isn't it better that let's have a union where we make the strategic choices and divide the market, and then we do this together. It will be more efficient. So once a year they had this meeting. So they dropped the weapons outside, and they had a lot of beer, and they found out really good strategies, and then they went out of this party, and then they started to kill each other again. With the Bluetooth story, the companies with the IT sector, information technology sector, they were in need to have something that a wireless transformation without being connected to IBM or whatever, which company that produced the stuff. So they settled in Lund, one area of the Greater Copenhagen, and they said, yeah, let's get together to solve this problem. So all the companies went there, dropped the weapons, locked the door. 2 days after, they solved the problem. And this new technology had to have a name. So they choose, or one of the guys who participate, he said, yeah, but this is similar to one book I have read about a tribe leader, Mr. Bluetooth. So let's call the technology Bluetooth. And this story explains the way we try to act with a Scandinavian spirit. Okay, we are not afraid of competing, but it's better to solve the common problem together and then compete, than start to compete without having the solution in front of us. The number we have, the key performance indicators, shows that 1% of our waste goes to landfill, 75% is recycled, 24% then waste to energy, and this all to the cost of 50 euros per person a year. And that means that we have to add some more coffee cups, cups of coffee. But it's not that many, I think 5 or 6 a year. So, in my opinion, this is not about the economy. It's about resource efficiency. And the resource efficiency could easily be copied by the cow. Here's our, you mentioned a lot of the food waste, how we do. And we have just copied the nature with the biogas plant that everyone talks about. And of course, the biogas plant that generates the energy is important. But the most important with the biogas plant is the recirculation of the nitrification. So with this model, we don't need to buy any fuel, diesel or whatever, for our transportations, for collecting and transport it for recycling. So the waste eliminates the cost for the transportation cost. So now when we come to this, we have these numbers and so on. Then it's easy to take sit back and think, okay, now we made it. But the question is, what did we make? And we found out we made it possible to live in a linear economy. Because we were the one, in the end, who solved all the problems so that the society could keep on living linear. Because we took care of everything in the end. So it was a bit scary to realize that the problem wasn't the others. The problem was us. We had invested a lot of money, we have done all these things that locked us in a situation that we were dependent on receiving waste, and a lot of waste. So this is about 7-8 years ago. The owners, they said, yeah, but how can you run this business? You need to meet the targets that we have to reduce the amount of waste, but that's at the same time, the fundamental business model of the company was based on the more waste we received, the more money we earned. Do you recognize that? I think all waste management companies in the world, or recycling companies in the world, their business idea is based on more waste. So I think this is, we are part of the problem. But the good news, we are part of the solution as well. Because if we have the energy and the visions to redefine ourselves and use our knowledge to think ahead instead of in a reactive way, our competences in this sector worldwide are crucial to get the right solutions from the beginning. What we decided to do, I will present now. But first of all, I want to say that it wasn't an easy trip to do this, because the economic muscles of the linear society or businesses, they have much, much more money than we have. And we have been to court, I think it's 28 times, to European court, to the national court, and so on. But we have 28-0 in gain for the circular economy until now. So we have challenged the whole system, and sometimes you reflect and think what I'm doing, but I have patient owners who trust in the way to go from the linear system to the circular. So I had some friends from the beginning, because in the area where I work, most of the companies are in one way or another connected to recycling. 24,000 employees in the sector, and leader in recycling of water, recycling of glass, and so on. So we had a business that understood that something had to be done. We had two extraordinary examples of industrial symbiosis, Kalundborg and Helsingborg, where it's about 30 different companies in each symbiosis connected with each other, where the waste from one company is the resource for another. And then we had a tradition of biofertilization. If the industrial symbiosis had lived for 50 years, the biofertilization had been used for 25 years at the fields. We have strong universities, University of Lund, the Tekniska Universitet, and then we got a worldwide investment for the future materials called ESS. It's where we develop what's becoming waste maybe in 50 years. And to not have waste, we have to be a part of that process to find the new materials. And last but not least, it's the ambitions of the political sector. They target us to reduce the amount of waste, including the recycling, with 50% from 2010 to 2020. And my employee said, Kim, you're crazy to accept that. But then I said, yeah, but it's not we who are going to do this. It's us together. It's the inhabitants, it's the companies, it's the universities, and it's the politicians. So what we put together, we set a name to call this idea of a new era, Vera Park. It's where the negocios, where the universities, and where the circles of ecologically go together. And now we have special knowledge in prevention of waste, source separation, education, logistics. Usually this business, it's not really good in logistics. We think we are, but then when we reflect on it, I got amazed last year. In 6, if you imagine, okay, one part of the city where you're working, about 60 roads, and then you imagine the amount of waste or collection points, and then if you try to calculate how many ways is it possible to collect this waste, 60 roads, like a small area, it equals the number of atoms in the university that you can collect this waste. And often we work not really with digital, we use paper and pen. Now, we have done this for 50 years. We do it the same way. But I say, in this part, it's so much money to collect to make it more efficient. Biogas for the transports, the leak water. We have the exploration of landfills. Some call it landfill mining. And then waste to energy. So what we are really not thinking of selling things. We are more networking, sharing knowledge. And during these 10 years, as I said, when we need to use our competences together within Vera Park to think ahead, to reach our targets, I now will present some of the results. As we have heard, one of the problems why we won't reach the 100% of recycling, we target 70, 75. Everyone knows it. It's plastic. And you can say, yeah, we can collect it. That's good, but we can't recycle it, so it's no use in that. So we have to think ahead. We have to think we need something with a fantastic function of plastic, but we need something that's degradable, something that's not fossil, something that could be treated in another way. So together with the European Union, a company called Gaia and Municipal of Båstad, we have taken the steps to develop a new material that can replace the petroleum and replace the recycling of plastic. We can collect it in the waste bin for the green waste. Another one is, we have heard it, food waste. So then we thought, okay, all the apartments, they have to go to somewhere else to locate their waste, to get rid of the waste. So what we found out, we need it to be easier to get rid of the food waste within the apartment. And then we redefined the old technology of using the waste where you smash it in the kitchen. So we have a separate system. So all the apartments here in this new built area, they have 3 pipes out, where we just use water for the tap, not for the toilets and not for the waste. And with this idea, we recirculate the nutrifications more efficiently than just collect it and make biogas. With the biogas, we needed to make the economy better. Then we needed to enter into the transport sector, and as the buses now try to move on to electricity, we found a new segment. It's the long-distance transporters. So we have liquid biogas, which runs the fleet of all the trucks in this region. We have taken steps to replace the fossil diesel for the ferries. So they will all, in the future, they will run partly on liquid natural gas and partly on liquid biogas. And we have taken steps to redefine the whole collection of waste. Today we have a production-orientated system. They come each day or every second day or every week. In the future, we just go as the aim is to reduce the amount of waste. So we can't just run the business like we did before. We have to collect the waste when it's full of waste, not empty bins. and just then implement the new technology. And then we have some other initiatives with PFAS, you probably know, in the leak water, and recycling of wood with a glue that's sustainable. Biocarbon will be extremely interesting, especially for, now we haven't talked a lot about the waste that contaminated soil, but biocoal is efficient to bind the contamination at the location instead of dig it up and transport it to a landfill. And ashes as well. But the most important, it's to put with the eyes of the consumer, which we now define as the user, as we live in a circular economy. There's no consumption, it's just that you use things. And we want to go together with our users to make it possible for them to live in a sustainable society where you take responsibility both for you when you use a product, but as well what happened before and what happened afterwards. So the concept of consumption is much, much wider and contains the using present, what happened before and what will happen afterwards. And this knowledge, it's a worldwide knowledge, and I want all of you to be part of this movement that we stop the consumption and start using the material in a resource efficient way. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Very much. In effect, there were no songs or gorillas, but there was a good story about the circular economy. We're going to end up with Josep Maria Tost. He's the director of the Catalan Waste Agency, and he's going to talk to us about what's happened over the last few years. The floor is yours, sir. Thank you. Good morning to you. I've got no gorillas. First of all, our waste management in Catalonia, the history. Okay, as you know, we're a small country in the Spanish state, and we have an organization like VAM in Flanders. We are responsible for the collection and processing of waste. We are responsible to the ministry, and we do the planning, coordination, and organize the infrastructure. Our reality is a midpoint between the current situation in Latin America and the situation in the most advanced countries in Europe. You know, the Spanish state became a member of the European Union in '86. The policies in Spain were a lot behind those of the rest of Europe, and the environmental policy started in Spain at the end of the '80s, beginning of the '90s, where we attempted to implement European legislation. But what we're talking about here is a change of habits and of citizen awareness, but most particularly awareness of the political world and policies. The generation of the laws, where budgets are allocated, and where social changes are sought. We changed a lot as a country. As I say, in 1984, our level of recycling was 1.4 of the waste percent of the waste we generated. Today, we're around 38–40%. For some years now, we've been at a bit of a standstill because there's been a political change. But what's very important is that in less than 20 years, we've achieved this kind of level. And what was the situation in Spain at the end of the '80s, beginning of the '90s? We had 2,000 landfills, 1,000 towns and 2,000 landfills. And, the kind that we saw here, burning, generating lixiviates, problems with rats, rodents, health problems. But there was a serious change in political awareness at the time. The first government, Spain, has its own region. Catalonia has its own regional government. And we had two serious problems of public health. One was the problem with wastewater, and the other was waste management. And a political option was taken to set up two powerful organizations that didn't exist. One was the Waste Council to deal with this, and they were very powerful. There was the Act of 83 in Catalonia, which is one of the first in Europe, and the 93 Act was very advanced in terms of European policy. So this was the situation. What was key? Political unity on the subject. It's clear that with waste and water, we don't have to fight between political parties, and we don't have to disorient the citizen, and the will of the Catalan government to devote public resources, debt, to finance infrastructure and to help the municipalities that are the owners of the waste to make changes. So two very important factors. We've got the very important laws, which if they're not complied to, they're no use. I mean, you need money to support them. Without support, financial support, you can't do anything. So my government here in Catalonia invested €1 billion in financing local agencies and infrastructure to convert those 2,000 landfills in 25 sanitary landfills and provide basic infrastructure for our nation, and to set up the Catalan Waste Agency, which supports the local authorities. 2,000 workers, which is key to support these changes in habits. That's the key. Instruments, very simple. A good law, which is complied to. That's it. It's enforced and adapted to our situation. The Catalan Waste Agency, we form part of Europe, but there's 2,000 kilometers from the Danish region or Flanders to here. 2,000 physical kilometers, cultural kilometers, differences in eating habits. We're a small country with 6.5 million citizens, and so we're kind of part of the old Europe. So the solution is not to literally copy. One of the great mistakes we made in the past, we went to the north of Europe to look at things. We have to adapt them to our situation, not copy them. So we need to acquire know-how and adapt it to our situation, to take the essence and adapt it. Programs, goals, without data, without information, how can you plan? With 1,000 city halls, how can I plan? So we require a kind of 5-year plan, but that has to be fed with data. What kind of waste do we generate in Catalonia? Where is it generated? What is the amount of it? All of that is key, but without planning and goals, people do nothing. If you don't have targets for them, challenges, people don't do anything. You cannot just make generic laws. Yeah, we'll do this, we'll foster that. No, that doesn't work. So a good law, good planning, useful planning. Obviously, as a government, we cannot leave these 1,000 municipalities on their own. So we need to plan goals, but we also need to plan the infrastructure. We've been doing that for 20 years because in Catalonia, the law is that waste treatment is financed by the government. So to close these landfills, we finance the construction of sanitary landfills, waste treatment processing plants, selection plants, more than 500 green points around Catalonia. So we don't just do the top bit, we also finance it. And then fiscal aspects. We are a very Mediterranean land. We work basically on the carrot and stick basis with positive and negative reinforcement. So, Why don't we drive at 170 kilometers an hour on our highways? We used to do it. Why not now? Because there are these machines there that take a picture of our car and they will fine us €600 and take 6 points off of our driving license. Why aren't we smoking here? 20 years ago in a conference like this, everyone would be smoking. So if we were to smoke here, the local police would come along and would fine us. So the question is environmental fiscality, to penalize bad practices and to reward good practices. Pay for throwing. This is what Obama's government said. Pay for generation. Here in Catalonia, those that pollute pay. The Catalan industry is very aware of that. We've made an effort to recycle waste here, but not the citizen. So there's a large part of the citizens that do recycle because of their ethics, because that's what they believe in, because that's what they want to do. But there is a part of the population that couldn't care less. What concerns us are the young people between 20 and 35, 40 years old. The 40-year-olds, we're also young, aren't we? So how do we change this? Economic support. That's the key. So the model is basically by law, the city halls. I'm a mayor. We must have to separate the different fractions, packages, glass, organic, and paper and cardboard, and then the remaining fraction. Okay? Which is, we approximately recycle some 38 point something % of our waste. 20% is incinerated, and 40% of it goes to sanitary landfills. That's the way things stand today. Why is it important to recycle? The 3 R's of the 90s. Here in Catalonia, 4 to 6% of CO2 emissions come from waste. To take a kilo of cardboard and paper to a landfill generates some 3 kilo equivalent of CO2, but if we recycle it, we save it. A kilo of organic fraction taken to a landfill generates 1.1 kilos of CO2 equivalent. On the other hand, if we recycle it, sorry. So, glass and metals obviously don't have a CO2 impact on a landfill, but for each kilo of glass we recycle, we save 200 kilos of CO2, and metals 2,000. From each kilo of metal, 2.4 kilos. Plastic. In a landfill, it won't cause emission, but energy is used. So when we tell people that they need to recycle, it's also for a clear environmental reason. And, we're seeing a change of mindset. In the Western world, we produced in the same way, linearly. You take raw material, you process them, use them, and chuck them. And we've been consuming in the same way for 40 years, which is a complete waste of resources, particularly after the Second World War. But we've come to the end of this. Why? Because for 100 years ago, when my grandfather was born in 1903, how many inhabitants were there in the world? 2 billion. When my father was born in 42, it was 2.4 billion. When I was born in 71, just a few years ago, there were 4.5 billion of us. Today, we share planet Earth with 7 billion people. In 2050, there'll be between 9 and 10 billion people. I think, we still haven't found an alternative planet, so we change our way of producing and consuming. I repeat, we cannot continue with the same model of production as we had 200 years ago. We need to change. There is no doubt about it. So the circular economy is not, please, forgive me, but it's not some sort of crap that Brussels has dreamed up to screw us all. No, we are faced with a change of mindset. We have to change. We either change or that's it, finished. As Hawkins says, in 100 years' time, otherwise we'll have to abandon the planet. And that's why all of us, we have to engage in a circular economy. It's all changed. We have a new paradigm which has started in the 21st century. We need to be aware of it. We need to believe it individually and collectively. We cannot waste more resources. We need to recycle, not just to bug each other. We need to, speaking clearly, we mayors don't go out, sort of listening to our citizens saying, no, we have to recycle more. No. Recycling doesn't create votes. We'd rather make a library, a cycle lane. That's what gains us votes. But to change waste management, who cares about that? So we need a political, institutional and technical conviction. We need to change models. So we're talking about things that 10 years ago people would never have dreamed of. A shared economy. We need a bartering economy. It sounds a very hippie thing. How many of us haven't been away and rented a house that we've shared with others, or rented a car by ours? That's what we do now. Now a car isn't something you own like we used to do. Now you can share a car. These concepts are here to stay. The circular economy is an old concept, 30 years old, but the Dutch carpet company invented the company. They used to produce millions of square kilometers of carpet for trade fairs, and they saw that it was a terrible waste. They started recycling the carpet, and what they do now is they rent the carpet out instead of selling it. So what we need is a new mentality to pay to use, not to possess. Composting. Plants on our terraces, in our gardens. In Catalonia, 35% of our waste is organic. So, we need to repair things, we need to assemble things, or, we'll also be using 3D printers for many things soon. So we need to be clear, as a society, as a small country of 7 million inhabitants, we have to learn to manage things in different ways, waste as little as possible. We're a small, very industrialized country. We became industrialized by a miracle. We started working with wood and cotton. We need to optimize because the world is growing and changing and everyone has the right to consume. But, can the Western world say to Latin America, no, please don't grow, you're using up all our resources? Or do we say that to China? No, we cannot do that, so we need to optimize what we generate. As an economy, we generate little and we have a lot of demand for raw materials, but we have a great potential for recycling. And this is the reality as things stand. From the periodic table, we recycle very little. We need to develop technology to use far more of it, or reuse far more of it. We recycle copper, steel, aluminium, but we need to create technology to recycle the rest. So, therefore, today, our waste is a source of resources, of employment. Here in Catalonia in 1994, there were 23 waste managers that were legalized. Today we have 1,000 companies, a bit like the Danish example. They provide 20,000 jobs, 10% of the GDP, some $14 billion. So it's a great opportunity. As an administration, what do we need to do? We need to foster these scenarios, help the private sector to change mindset, that we, handle resources, we do not consume them. So we have a resource and waste plan until 2020. So as a government, what do? We foster reuse. We create markets. There's no market for recycled goods. We need to promote it and create a market, a demand for it. The question of repair, selective collection. It's not a burden on the citizen. It's an act of civility to have an exchange of products. as a government, the question of fiscal aspects, to penalize landfills, to promote recycling. The question of cost is vital. You've seen it already. And it's a very important issue on a political level. To apply technology or processes, all of that has a cost. It's not the same to use an ordinary landfill as to use a sanitary landfill. Or to co-generate electricity. I come from a town of 1,200 inhabitants. When I became mayor, my neighbors paid €18 a year for waste management. Today they pay 140. Is that expensive or cheap? From 18 to 140. Expensive. In 95, what did we do? We drove a truck around, picked up the waste, dumped what the truck had into an old granite quarry. And then when it was too full, we set fire to it. That's what we did. In the summer evenings, you would see columns of smoke rising. I mean, it looked like, they were smoke signals being sent out by Sioux Indians. Today, the €140, what does it do? It pays for a composting plant, a methane plant, and we have a sanitary landfill. Is it expensive or cheap? We have to make an awareness in our society that we're heading to a different form of economy, which is going to mean that the savings we make today could be costs for the future. We have to pay our own costs. Politically, we cannot afford low garbage taxes, polluting rivers, promoting disease for future generations. No, we need to make a significant effort in terms of political education. We need to achieve a consensus. Economic support is important, eco-design, awareness. We have to do things in a different way. So when we bring a product on to the market, we have to think about dismantling it at the end of its useful life. When we buy a car, a TV, we have to see that we can reuse it to the maximum. That's very important. We have to avoid mixes of plastics. Plastic is not going to disappear, but we have to change mindset with it. We need to change the way we produce plastic. Plastic is reusable, so we can't step back. We can't get rid of plastic. Bioplastics is another question, and we need to compost organic waste. The fiscal aspect is key. In Belgium, in Denmark or Sweden, they recycle more than in Catalonia. It's not because they're taller, more blonde or more good-looking than we are. No, not just because of that, but because of this. Denmark established in 1987 the first landfill tax, where in Catalonia, in Panama, in Brazil, Chile, Argentina, it was cheaper to use a sanitary landfill. Who's going to recycle if it's so cheap? Shit, nobody. Nobody. So we need to penalize landfills. That's it. As simple as that. That's not very populous. Catalonia is the only part of Spain that taxes landfills. So to go to Belgium, in Belgium, it will cost you €150 to use a landfill. In Catalonia, it's a very important thing. So in 2011, we carried out a cost analysis. The average cost of a landfill in Catalonia, €37. Biogas plants cost €72. Incinerator, 50. If I ask a mayor or mayoress, where do you want to take your waste? Where are you going to take it? To the sanitary landfill, of course you are. So the key, there's just one. Increase and increase and increase the cost of it. Because what's logical is for us to divert resources to recycling. I repeat, that is the key. carrot and stick. These are the recycling costs of different countries in Europe, and so the higher the cost of a landfill, the more recycling is done. Not stupid, is it? So that's the key. So we're talking about 40% recycling in Catalonia, and we want to get to European levels. It's a need. We need to increase the cost of landfills, and that's it. It's as simple as that. Here we can see how things have changed. The level in Catalonia, we can see here the first law, and the separation of the organic fraction, which is key, which is 35% of the waste. So how do we encourage our town halls to separate bio-waste? With law, it's key to give them time periods to change. But what's most important, where we see most action, is when it is taxed. When it becomes cheaper to recycle the organic fraction than to dump it. Not a miracle. You know, there's no Lourdes here. So how do we apply this tax? By consensus, an agreement between the city halls of Catalonia and Catalan government. We pay for dumping, the landfills collect this money, and what do we do with this money? 96% goes back to our municipalities. It doesn't go to the treasury of the Catalan government. It's reinvested. How? Paying for the cost of the separation and recycling of the organic fraction and paying for the infrastructure needed. That's what's key. This is our current model. The fee is €30 per tonne of stuff that goes to the landfill, and the most return pays for the collection of bio-waste. There's a fixed amount for composting, and then a variable amount according to the purity, that is the quality of the organic fraction collected. And the key is what you can see here at the top. To increase the cost of landfills. A few years ago, it was pretty slow, but now it's it's €30 per tonne, and that's a mover. So 36 of that is returned to city halls, to local councils. That's what we need to do. It's key to return it to the local authorities. This took us years to negotiate. This was by consensus. How do we move our councils to do it? How do we get them to develop plans for prevention, to promote recycling, to change to more efficient systems? How do we do it? Door-to-door awareness campaigns. You know, we say that, okay, we're going to increase the tax on landfills by €5. Obviously, that's where you make a difference. And the other is a question of education. This is the cost to a family for a day in Barcelona. This was the 2 cups of coffee in Brazil. A family of 4. This is the cost per day of water. €1.1. Electricity, 3.1. Natural gas, 2.2. Waste, 60 cents. If Barcelona City Council increases waste tax 60%, we're going to have a revolution. Water, electricity, gas, telephone, if they go up, nothing happens. And this is per year in Barcelona, euros per family. So it's clear that what we need to do is to relativize costs and inform our citizens. I'm going to skip this, as you've got the copy of the presentations. Carlos's team will. This one is important. Who pays for the management of waste? The important thing is tax. It is the citizen that has to pay. There were problems in Spain in the past and in some of the Latin American countries. The citizens don't pay the cost. If you don't feel responsibility, you don't change, and it requires clear national legislation for everybody to pay. Otherwise, it's very hard to implement innovation, changes of model, of mindset. Without money, it's impossible. And we have to pay per production. That's the key. That is the key. How do I break through this 40% in Catalonia? For people to pay carrot and stick. If people recycle, they pay less taxes. Today, we all pay the same. We're developing a new law over the coming years in Catalonia to promote the circular economy and, above all, to implement pay per production. 3 experiences here in Catalonia which are of interest, but this needs to spread if we want to break through this 40% barrier. There is a way of doing it. We've got grants, subsidies, which are modest because of the crisis, but to help change local models, the collection of organic waste, and to help industry adapt to a circular economy. That's important. Small economic supports for that, and obviously with our national project for eco-design, which is essential to encourage companies, corporations, people. For example, with fast food, we promote a lot of studies, look around Europe, the question of industrial symbiosis, which is cooperation between the industrial world and agencies such as ours in terms of the use of raw materials, byproducts. In 1993, we've got the creator of this here, which is a virtual exchange space of more than 3,000 companies that exchange waste as resources. And this allows us to avoid some 300,000 tons of industrial waste going to landfills. And lastly, what we need to do is to have a market for recycled products, a procurement program. So we need to promote recycled things when we need to change tires of the public fleet. 20% of them have to be recycled, treaded. When we are making a government agreement, all of the public-private organizations in Catalonia, by law, at least 5% of the arids that are used for cement have to be recycled, at least 5%. If we do not generate a public market, what's going to happen? How can we expect the private sector to do it? So we have to create the market. Strategy of innovative public procurement. The more we recycle, the greater the efficiency, and we have to recycle more. Not to bug anybody, but because it's a real need. What we don't want to do is to hurt the future generations. And we need the technology to do it, obviously. We need to educate our citizens, the politicians, that there is a cost. It requires a significant change in habits. And if we don't do that, things are going to end up badly. We need a significant change in mindset. This is not a question of aesthetics. It's a question of changing the social, economic model to guarantee the future for the generations to come. That's all. Thank you very much, and I remain at your disposal to answer any questions you may have. We're running 15 minutes late. We're going to go straight on to the closing of the Congress. Please, could we ask our final speakers to take the podium? Prior to going on to the closing session, just a bit of housekeeping. Let me remind you of a couple of things. At 2:30, the coach will leave from the front of the campus here to take you to the integrated waste valorization center of the Maresme. We'll have a bit of lunch there, and then we'll visit the plant. And for the Relagres members, at 9, the coach will leave from the door of the Ateneo Hotel to take you on the visit to the metropolitan area of Barcelona, to some of their facilities, and we'll have a reception there as well. So, having said that, that's the program for tomorrow, Wednesday, June the 14th. With regard to the visit. Okay, now we're going to go on to the closing ceremony. We're going to start with Mr. Jaime Cataldo. He is the General Manager of MRS and Executive Secretary appointed yesterday of Relagres. So, Jaime, the floor is yours.
Estimado alcalde,
dear Mr. Mayor, authorities from the local authorities, from the Catalan government, friends, the different representatives, delegates here, we are very happy with the organization of this 5th International Relagres Seminar. We are very happy that it has been held here in this beautiful city with the wonderful people we've come to know. We've seen that there is progress in terms of the discussion of these issues, new, interesting aspects. We've found certain controversies in certain areas, and you've seen, like we, that the situation in America and Latin America and Europe is different, and that each continent is different. And we've tried to, over the last 2 days, to learn much of this diversity. Here, somebody recently said that we shouldn't copy, and we agree with this. We haven't come here to copy. We have come, indeed, to learn. And please God, that we can learn so as not to make mistakes that have already been made. I mean, we'll make other mistakes quite probably, but at least to ensure that we don't make the same mistakes that have been made in the past. We have, in several of our Latin American countries, we have opted for this, and we hope that the challenges that we are facing will be socialized and we'll see this over the coming meetings. Yesterday, at the annual meeting of Relagres, we also took the decision to hold the next 3 international meetings, the first in La Paz in Bolivia, the second in Montevideo in Uruguay, and the third in Panama City in Panama, and the fourth quite probably will be in Korea, I think the gentleman said. Hopefully we will, over the coming meetings, have achieved more than what we've achieved up till now. And that is why we are seeking an agreement with the foundation concerned with the circular economy. And this morning we've agreed to work with the IDB and also with the PMV program to seek our discussion not only to be accompanied by the different municipalities, but also to see the participation of international organizations to end up with an annual analysis of the situation, which we will do at the next meeting. So for us, therefore, it is very important to count on this cooperation with international organizations, cooperation with international municipalities and cities, and also with waste treatment plants, such as the one here in Maresme. Relagres, too, is going to make the best of this year, not only to organize the coming seminar, but also to establish a technical administrative HQ in Santiago to pick up all of the concerns of our members and also to participate more actively than we have done in the past. We've had dialogues between the different cities where we've seen and analyzed common problems that we have, and we've seen this cooperation occurring, but we want to intensify it over the coming months. Just, Mr. Mayor, to reiterate to all of you, to our friends, to the authorities of Catalonia here, all of the participants in the seminar, to thank you all, because we really do appreciate the fact that we've been here and been able to share all of this with you. Thank you.
A continuación toma la palabra Josep María Tos, director de la agencia.
The floor to Josep María Tos, the director of the Catalan Waste Agency.
Buenos días, presidente de la red Relagres, alcalde de Mataró.
Chairman of Relagres, Mataró Mayor, Director of the Consortium. I think that we have been here after 2 days of very intense discussion. We know at the Catalan Agency that this is not a matter of how we manage our waste, but rather how we reduce the impact on the environment and the so-called climate change. We know, however, that this transition towards new models is not an easy process. It requires time, in our case, 20 years. But as we all know, a big journey begins with just one step, and we need to take it. Catalonia as a country knows, we're very aware that there's still a long way ahead of us, but we are more than willing to exchange and to share and to think about this together, to share our mistakes, because we've learned from them. There are a lot of actions that were undertaken after successes, but also after failures, and to be transparent and loyal to each other, constructive, because at the end of the day, we're a small territory, but we're speaking about the global space we all share, this earth. And this is a matter that we all need to defend in order to improve the legacy that we will give to our children. There are different viewpoints and cultures and perspectives, but the planet is exactly the same for everyone. So we need to come up with better solutions to improve the health of this planet, which is, of course, worsening every day. We need to work on these solutions and to apply them at the local scale, not only the global scale, so that future generations do not see such an impact on their environment. We all want to enjoy high living standards, but of course, those rights should not impede, the rights of our offspring. Let's collaborate. I think that this has been quite an interesting discussion. Several dozen speakers have contributed their knowledge and have reflected upon this together. Relagres is the right forum to exchange information and to work among cities and institutions. So we are here at your entire disposal for anything you need. We also offer our help to the Maresme Consortium, our collaboration, so that amongst all of us we can improve the world for our future generations with the right waste management policies today. Thank you, congratulations, and see you next time.
A continuación toma la palabra.
We give the floor to Mr. David Bote, who is the mayor of Mataró, as well as the president of the Consortium for Municipal Solid Waste Management.
Yo siempre explico que hablar el último acostumbra a ser complicado.
Tend to say that it's so difficult to speak the very last minute of a meeting, and to do so, trying to come up with future prospects is even more difficult. So I promise I'll do my best. First, I would like to say it's gone. Well, I don't know. Well, I had 3 items, and all of a sudden I forgot the first one. And if I don't remember it, I'll only give you 2. But the second item I was supposed to tell you, my second idea, had to do with the fact that I've been a mayor for 2 years. 2 years to the date, I was elected mayor by the plenary at the City Hall. And sometimes You know that you have a lot of issues to deal with every day. It makes matters very complicated. You deal with everything that's urgent and immediate, even the need for our own survival, you know. And citizens, of course, sometimes vote for us because we take those actions forward, but that involves a lot of thinking. And that means that sometimes the real serious problems, the ones that you know must be dealt with by whoever is in charge because they will eventually become more significant, you need some time to think about them. And sometimes you don't have that luxury. That's why in the case of waste management, this is what tends to happen. Jose Maria talks to a lot of mayors, and he knows that this is a thought shared by all of us. Sometimes there are a lot of walls and mountains, and it's better to climb them one step at a time instead of just overnight when the problem is too daunting and it's impossible to face it. So I hope, as I said back in Chile, I think I conveyed a similar message, that some of the things that you have listened to, experienced, or participated in during these 2 days in Mataró, I hope they're useful to all of us so that we can keep climbing that mountain and to reach the goal that we had all set for ourselves. Jose Maria spoke about management, waste management, and that's exactly what we need to do to take care of our planet. The third idea, I still cannot remember my first idea. Well, it doesn't really matter. My third point was I'm a defender of this network. There's this Italian philosopher who is still alive, and he says that he lives 5 minutes before his time. And I'm convinced that modernity, being a contemporary person today, means not only trying to solve your problems on your own. Being modern means setting up the necessary fora, the necessary spaces to meet with others as social beings that we are and find those solutions together. I think that's our need. That's what we need to continue to do, where we will find solutions to our challenges. And I think that this network is the proper institution to do so. And I just remembered my first point. You know that there are intervals in mathematics, right? There's an interval, some like Monday to Tuesday. Some of them are closed, some of them are open. So we wanted this to happen during these 2 days, but we hope it remains open in the future. And for whatever reason, we keep working with one another in order to attain these common goals. And now that I saw that there are some staff from the technical secretariat that joined us, as I did yesterday, I would like to express my gratitude to the network, the secretariat, and the Catalan Waste Agency, who have co-funded this event, as well as our sponsors and everyone who has been working throughout these days to make this a reality. I hope that you are living our country with a nice memory of this city that has always tried to make the best and offer, the best of our contribution. I hope that you enjoy these 2 days. You'll always be welcome to Mataró.